Today, I want to talk about AI tools and how much energy they need to operate. I'm really fascinated by this because every question we ask ChatGPT, for instance, every sentence written, every image generated uses electricity. And when millions of people do that every single day, that's an enormous amount of energy and electricity. So this is kind of a way to visualize it. I've got this light bulb here, and every time you ask ChatGPT a question, uses as much energy as keeping a very efficient light bulb on for a couple of minutes. That's not an exact number, but that's how Sam Altman, the co-founder of OpenAI, described it in a blog. Now, 2 minutes sounds like a small amount, but when you multiply that by hundreds of millions to billions of queries a day, it adds up to enough electricity to potentially power tens of thousands of homes every single day. Now, all that energy demand comes from data centers. These are giant warehouses of servers that we depend on for the internet, cloud storage, AI data sets and models, cryptocurrency. Now, these data centers are scattered all over the world. Huge clusters are in the US. Other major ones are in Ireland, the Netherlands, China, Singapore, and across the Gulf in countries like Saudi Arabia and the UAE. Now, according to the International Energy Agency, or IEA, data centers around the world combined accounted for 1.5% of all electricity consumed globally in 2024. Technically, that's about 415 terawatt hours, but roughly that's the same amount of electricity France uses in a year. And the IEA says that could rise to around 3% of global electricity use, or even higher by 2030, mostly driven by AI. That's like adding roughly another Japan's worth of electricity demand to the global power grid, just to keep our digital lives and our AI chats running. In the US, by far the biggest data center hub, power demand from data centers accounted for more than 4% of total US electricity use in 2023, and it's expected to keep climbing as AI grows. And by the way, every time a new version of an AI model is created and launched, like say ChatGPT 4 to GPT 5, it takes even more energy because AI doesn't memorize like a human. It builds mathematical relationships between words and concepts. So training a new AI model can take weeks or even months as supercomputers process and reprocess massive amounts of data. Each round burns through huge amounts of electricity and requires cooling because those chips get extremely hot. So yes, AI may be the future, but only if we can keep the lights on, so to speak. And that demand for energy to power AI is already reshaping the entire global energy map. In what way? Well, I've got a guest today, James Lovell, a former energy policy director at the US State Department, who also happens to be my brother-in-law. So lucky for me, I can tap into his wealth of experience and expertise and share it with you. Hi, Jay.
Hi, Leon.
Thanks for joining me for this conversation. So, Jay, tell me a little bit about what you did.
Yeah, absolutely. I had a variety of roles at the Department of State, but my most recent position was a energy diplomacy office director, where I covered about a third to a half of the world, Europe, the Western Hemisphere, and Africa, pushing forward energy policy goals and objectives across the world.
Okay, so let's kick off.
So before I start, I do want to note that any of the views I present here are based off of my own research. They do not represent views from the U.S. government. My information comes from a variety of sources, in particular information from the International Energy Agency reports and the Center for Strategic and International Studies.
Got it. Jay, AI takes so much energy. So where is this energy coming from to power AI right now?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Data centers that fuel AI take up an enormous amount of energy. And the electricity that's generated for it, it kind of comes from a variety of sources. It really depends on the size of the data center that you're looking at, or the AI needs that are in the case, the location on the site, and the country where the data center is housed. But if you're looking globally, the power is generated from a couple of different sources. About 30% of the electricity generated to power data centers today is provided by coal. Give 27%-ish, it comes from renewables, solar, wind, and hydropower. Natural gas, another fuel source, powers about 26%, and then nuclear trails a little bit behind at 15%.
That's interesting that coal is still such a huge part of it. So, going forward, is that going to change? Are countries going to have to diversify their energy mix to power AI?
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking specifically to coal, you might be a little bit surprised to see it that high. I know I was. A lot of that speaks specifically to China's power generation needs for this. It is currently powering a lot of its data centers and its AI architecture through coal. But China is a good example of a country that's really investing heavily in renewables where possible, battery storage, and in nuclear for the future diversification of the energy mix. So yes, you are going to have to see countries diversify to meet future power generation needs as data centers and AI models scale up in terms of complexity.
So how are different countries meeting their energy demands at the moment?
So as noted, China's putting a lot of effort right now in terms of its immediate power generation needs on coal in the eastern part of its country. However, it is investing significantly in building out its data center mix in the western part of its country. And to power that, it's doing quite a bit through renewables, solar and wind. The United States, which is the largest, by some distance right now, the largest hub for data centers globally, particularly when you're talking about AI-focused data centers, they're getting a leg up by taking advantage of their natural resources, in particular their natural gas resources. The United States has tremendous natural gas reserves, so it's using natural gas power plants and gas turbines to sort of lead the way on basically on powering their data center.
Again, we're talking about so much energy demand now and going forward. So what do you think the main challenges are and what they're going to be?
There are a lot of main challenges. The United States powers its data center needs using natural gas, which is about 40% of how it powers supplies, and then mix of renewables, nuclear, and coal afterwards. China right now is about 70% coal. That's not sustainable, both for climate targets for countries that are pursuing that, but also just in terms of where the future of energy is going. Countries are going to need to push towards renewables and clean energy. So that's a major challenge, is making sure that those are viable energy solutions in the future. There are a lot of countries investing in battery storage solutions to really make renewables an always on, a dispatchable power system, which is a major challenge right now. They're not. You can't use renewables 100% of the time, and data centers need that. Countries and hyperscalers, your big Googles, your Metas, your OpenAIs, they're investing a lot of money as well into nuclear solutions, clean energy solutions, smaller nuclear reactors, essentially small modular reactors, but ones that can power smaller data clusters, putting a ton of money in that to meet those goals. One major challenge you're seeing nowadays is the power grid. There's huge amounts of increasing demand on electricity grids and transmission systems that aren't typically designed to ramp up when high demand comes online. They're finely balanced to whatever the current demand systems are. So you can look at the US, they released a AI action plan in July that specifically highlights investments in the grid to make sure that it can keep up with the demands and power generation coming online for data centers. Just two more that I'd like to mention: power generation equipment. So we're talking a lot about the power sources, the fuel sources that are needed. But in order to take fuel and turn it into electricity, you need to have power generation equipment. Huge backlog for that. So that's a challenge that countries are working through. And then finally, and perhaps the most interesting challenge from a political perspective, is that the major increase in electricity demand has raised power prices, as well as the risk for blackouts and power outages, which has really made this a political challenge domestically, at least within the United States, at a local level, that representatives and local officials are really having to balance between the economic opportunities that data centers can provide, both locally and nationally, but the challenges that it may present for local communities.
And so that's something that all countries are having to look at. Any country. I mean, I'm assuming the whole world is looking at AI and power generating for AI. So are these the types of solutions that everybody's looking at?
Yeah, across the board, these are going to be challenges everywhere. Of course, like how, speaking to the political dynamics, that's going to vary from country to country and political system to political system. But when you talk about strains on the grid, when you talk about limited power generation equipment, and in particular, when you talk about the push to meet sort of climate goals and putting new generation solutions online that aren't consistently relying just on fossil fuels, these are solutions that, speaking frankly, even from an international perspective, that will have to be funded both publicly and privately. There is no easy solution for any of these. The economics have to be there. And it is the hyperscalers. It's the fact that you have big tech and big money online that need power that are bringing these solutions to market. So it really is the confluence of big tech and energy needs is entirely redrawing the global energy map. And frankly, could produce some really positive solutions from a global climate perspective as well.
So in the future, we could potentially have AI energy hubs like we have oil powers today, right? So certain countries could be like the big new AI energy hubs.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, again, reaching back to the Trump administration's July America's AI Action Plan, it lays out a clear perspective for AI dominance. And at the center of AI dominance is being a data center hub. And going back to your original point, if you want to be a data center hub, you need to be a power generation hub too. So you will see a lot of power, not just data center clusters, but power generation clusters as a result.
Any countries that come to mind,
yeah,
apart from the US?
Yes, the US and China are absolutely vying for that dominance and leveraging their natural resources and their economies to kind of position themselves at front of the line for that. But they're not the only countries. A couple of other good examples for this are the UAE and Saudi Arabia in the Middle East. They have the funds and the international business connections to invest in the tech and energy solutions that are needed for AI. They're at the forefront of sort of renewable battery solutions. They're helping fund small modular reactors. They have the funds to sort of lead a lot on the front end of the technology solutions here. But on the opposite end of the spectrum, you can look at the Nordics, which have money, but interestingly more have the climates and almost always on renewables to power data centers. There are going to be other places and other climates that may not be at the forefront, may not ever be in the same place that the United States or China is in terms of being the end-all be-all for these, but really will play a major role in terms of AI data center hubs and AI energy needs.
So the irony is that many industries are using AI to become more efficient. Are we seeing that in the energy sector too?
Yeah, it is a little bit counterintuitive, but it already is taking place in a couple of ways. Oil, natural gas, and even geothermal firms are already using AI models to help improve seismic analyses that can help identify better drilling sites and areas where they can exploit resources more efficiently. And when you look at the oil and gas sectors, they're able to use AI to better reduce emissions along the value chain. When you look at renewables, the most productive one so far is more precise and detailed weather forecasting through AI solutions. It can facilitate better electricity generation through renewables. Essentially, if you can more accurately predict when the sun is shining or the wind is blowing, you can get more power out of those from panels to turbines, and you can figure out better when the battery sources can bring those online to the generation needs. I would also note on the power grid, which I mentioned before is a major challenging, you can better sort of forecast the load demand that you'll need to improve efficiencies and minimize risk of overtaxing the grid and proactively ensure preventive maintenance. And then finally, one aspect that is really important throughout this process is permitting and licensing in order to get new generation systems online and connected to the grid. There's at least within the United States, a fairly onerous and time-intensive process in the permitting and licensing timeline. And that can be dramatically improved with AI solutions, including things like digital twins, where they can essentially model things in an entirely digital format. And that can dramatically reduce the wait time to get generation onto the grid.
Jay, thank you so much, because this is such a fascinating topic for me. But I think it's really hard for people to understand how much energy we need, even for like sending a ChatGPT message or a question, and then we're talking about larger scales of AI. So obviously the energy demands are going to be massive going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a challenge for our times, but it really is producing some fascinating and some really hopeful, some things I'm optimistic about in terms of the future of power generation within the world.
What are you optimistic about?
I'm optimistic about battery solutions that will be coming online to bring solar and wind into the mix for baseload and dispatchable power. And I'm particularly optimistic about the future of nuclear. Small modular reactors, when those come online, really can be a game changer for how the world powers not just major economies, but across the globe. Its energy needs. Always on dispatchable power is great. Small modular reactors can do that at a much more affordable scale.
Jay, thank you so much.
Appreciate it, Leone. Take care.
That's it for this week. What are your thoughts on AI? Not just energy needs, but in general. Send me your thoughts, DM me or drop me a comment. As always, I've linked all the original sources for this topic in my YouTube description, so you can explore for yourself if you're interested. And if you want more explainers like these, subscribe to my channel or follow me on socials. And PS, a side note, no pandas were powered or overpowered in the making of this episode. Thanks for watching.